Welcome to the channel. I'm Stacy, and my goal here is to help you to play better and sound better in your worship services. Today we're going to go over the parts for the song He's the One by Bethel Music. This one's in the key of G flat, which is the same as F sharp, and it is at 70 beats per minute. We're going to be playing a few different chord shapes. We have the E shape here at the 2nd fret, the D at the 7th, and the A at the 11th. Coming in right here on the intro, we're going to be at that E shape. We're going to be picking the G string at the 3rd fret, hammering on to the 4th. Pick the B string at the 2nd, the D at the 4th, the D at the 1st. We're going to repeat the first part of that. On the G string, strike the 3rd fret, hammer onto the 4th, the B at the 2nd, the D at the 4th, and then the B at the 4th, the B at the 2nd. We're going to repeat that phrase, but the first half of it has a slight change the second time through. The hammer on is the same to the 1st fret. And then we're going to be on the high E string, 1st fret to 2nd fret. And then the back half of the phrase is the same as the first pass. And with all the effects, it'll sound like this. And coming out of that, we're in verse 1, so we're just going to rake the F sharp or G flat, just the low string, so the E, A, D, G, and B. And I did that with the tone setup that I've got for swells, and that way it helps that to carry out, kind of bloom and fill that space a bit. It's a pretty small down part, and so that worked out perfect. And then a little bit through that, we're going to be up here at the 11th fret on the B string, and we're going to strike the 11th fret, the 12th, and the 14th. And so that whole part with the tone setup for swells will sound like this. Coming out of that, we're in an interlude, which is the same as our intro. We're just going to run it one time through, though. And there's a slight change, so we're going to be at the G string at the 3rd fret. Pick that, hammer on to the 4th fret, the B at the 2nd, the D at the 4th, the D at the 1st. And then, like the quick hit that we did at the 1st and 2nd, we're going to be up here at the 3rd and 4th. And when we hit that 4th fret, you want to kick on your swell tone to help that note bloom a little bit. Once that moment has passed, we're going to be raking. So that's going to go on for an 8 count with that measure. And then we're going to rake in on a G flat. And I just fretted the high string, so from the D down to the high E. And then a G sharp, G flat, suspended 4th. And then an E flat minor. And coming right out of that, we're going to be doing that hammer on the G string. And then we have a little single note run. We're going to strike the B string at the 4th, the 2nd, the 4th, and then the 7th. So with all the effects, it'll sound like this. That leads us into our first chorus, and we're going to switch to our snapshot 2, which I have set up just with louder repeats. And we're going to be raking. So we're going to be raking that G flat here at the D shape at the 7th fret, then the G flat suspended 2nd, G flat suspended 4th, and then an E flat minor, and then another G flat suspended 4th. So we're just anchored up here. We have our G flat, which is going to be right here at the 7th fret B string. and then our D shape puts us with the G and the high E string at the 6th fret. That suspended second chord is just dropping back that high E to the 4th fret. The suspended 4th is just bringing that high E up to the 7th fret. And then our E flat minor is the G string fretted at the 8th, the B at the 7th, and the high E at the 6th. With all the effects, it'll sound like this. Coming out of that, we're into that turnaround again. So E position down here at the 2nd fret, the G string being picked at the 3rd fret, hammer onto the 4th. The 4th fret on the D, the 1st fret on the D, and then the 3rd fret on the D and the 4th fret on the D. And then this one we do have a back half, so it's the same as the back half of the first phrase on the intro. And now we're into verse 2, and then we're going to be on our preset setup for our louder repeats. We're going to be palm muting the D string at the 4th fret. We're going to palm mute that 4 times. And then we're going to pick the G at the 3rd, the G at the 4th, the B at the 2nd. And so all of that will kind of feel like this. And so you can hear, even with the low repeats, it has a cool gallop sound to it. And we're going to come back up to that D string at the 4th fret, and we're going to palm mute that. We're going to pick it 9 times, 1 pass through, and then 8 times, 2 passes through. And we're going to repeat that whole section twice. And coming out of that, we're going to be on the D string, pick that 4 times, go through the G at the 3rd, G at the 4th, B at the 2nd, and then we're going to pick that 4 more times. And then wrapping up that section, we're going to be striking the high E at the 2nd fret, the B at the 2nd, the B at the 4th, the B at the 2nd, the B at the 4th, the B at the 2nd. Now that's how it was on the track, but if you wanted to carry that up to the 7th fret, you'd be able to do that too, and it'll just track a little bit closer to the melody of the song. So I'll run through it slow without the effects, and then I'll run through it a little bit closer to tempo with the effects. And here's how it'll be with the effects. That brings us to our next chorus, and on this one we're going to be anchoring off of that G flat in the D shape at the 7th fret, and we're going to strike the B string at the 7th, the G at the 6th, then we're going to rotate that, just kind of rolling through it. So let's see, so 2 times on the 7th, the 6th fret stays, 2 times on the 7th, 2 times on the 6th on the B string, so. And then 4 times on the 4th fret B string. And we're going to run through that 4 times. And on the very last pass, we're not going to strike the G string at the 6th fret. So with the effects, it'll sound like this. And coming out of that, we're going to go into a breakdown. We're going to be raking our G flat up here, our D shape at the 7th fret, our G flat sus4, and our E flat minor. Back to the G flat sus4. With the effects, it'll sound like this. that takes us straight into the bridge. And with the bridge, we're going to be playing very similar stuff that we did at the intro. So the G string, 3rd fret to 4th fret is the same, the B at the 2nd. And then on this one, we're going to strike that D string at the 4th and just hold that. So this is a bit of a down bridge and it's going to build. So we don't want to play all the notes up front, and that way we've got somewhere to go as the bridge builds. So we're doing that, landing on the 4th fret on the D string. And then the second half of the phrase is the same as it was earlier, only instead of resolving at the 2nd fret of the high E string, we're going to go up to the 7th fret on the B. We're going to run through that 2 times. And for this section, I have the overdrive on, so I've kicked on the ODR-1, or if you're using a different kind of preset, or if you purchased my preset, there's a foot switch for the HX Stomp that kicks up the drive, and then the Helix has plus OD. So that's going to happen for this section. And we're going to be with Snapshot 2, which is going to be our slightly louder repeats, and then the overdrive. So with the effects, that first section will sound like this. I'm going to go through it once, even though it's 2 times in the song. Once we've gone through that twice, now we start to build. So we're going to be playing a few more notes. So the first half of that phrase is the same, the first portion. So the G string, the B string, the D at the 4th, the D at the 1st, and then the high E on the 1st and 2nd fret. The second half of that phrase is the same as we just did, resolving at the B string 7th fret. So with the effects, it'll sound like this. We run through that 1 time. So we did the first phrase twice. Now we did this one. And now I'm going to kick down to the bridge pickup, and I'm going to kick on my octave. And then we're going to run through that first part of the phrase again. This time it's going to be 3rd fret to the 4th fret on the G, the B, and then we're going to settle there on the D string at the 4th. And then we're going to come up to the B string at the 11th, the B at the 12th, and then the high E at the 9th. It would be the same as if you played the 9, 12, and 14. And then we repeat that, but with a slight change. So the 3rd fret to the 4th, the B at the 2nd, the D string at the 4th, and then the B string at the 4th fret, but we're going to strike that 4 times, slide up to the 7th fret, and strike that 4 times. It'll sound like this. Here it is without the effects, and then I'll run through it with the effects. And with the effects, and coming out of that, we have a part that we're going to repeat twice. So the G to from the 4th to the 3rd, the B at the 2nd, the D at the 4th, the B at the 4th, the high E at the 1st and the 2nd. Repeat that again with a slight change. So 3rd to the 4th fret on the G, and then the B at the 2nd, the D at the 4th, and then the B at the 4th. We're going to strike that 4 times. Come up to the 7th fret and strike that 4 times. And once we finish that phrase, I'm going to hit my preset I've got set up for swells on that 7th fret B string, let that ring. And then I'm going to swell in on a G flat sus4, which is the G string at the 6th, the B and high E at the 7th. And then an E flat minor, which is a G at the 8th, B at the 7th, high E at the 6th. Back to that G flat sus4, and then to the G flat, which is just the D shape anchored at the 7th fret. And then it runs through that 1 more time. So with all the effects, I'll hit the last phrase of that last part of the bridge, and then into the outro. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, subscribe and hit that like button for good measure. If you'd like the resources for this song, you can find them at a link in the description box below. There are a handful of downloads free for you in there as well. I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you in the next one.